All right, why don't we get started? Welcome, everyone. Today's webinar topic is going to cover construction financing with the SBA 504 loan. Most of our audience today are members of the CDC community. I know there are a lot of exciting things going on in SBA with new refi rules and other exciting opportunities on the horizon here. My name is Alex Cohen. I'm one of the principals at Liberty SBF. And I'm joined today with one of my colleagues, Alex Prombaum, who runs credit. Let me give a quick run through of the agenda for our webinar today. I'm going to kick it off with a company overview, a little bit about the opportunity for construction financing with Liberty SBF. We are obviously an active lender in the SBA 504 program, and more recently have expanded our product offerings to include more business plan extensive and construction financing options through the 504 program. Talk a little bit about pricing and how we price credit here at Liberty. Alex Prombaum is going to walk through a couple of actual deal examples for interim and construction financing deals that we've closed and funded here at Liberty through the 504 program. And then we'll talk about how to submit a deal and our quoting and application process generally. And then we'll leave it open for some questions at the end. Just a quick overview on the company. Founded in 2011, we're a national small balance commercial real estate lender with particular expertise in SBA 504. Since inception, we have closed and funded over $2 billion in loans. Most recently, we're very active in the SBA's PPP program, where we funded over 25,000 PPP loans. Very proud and excited about that opportunity. Working very diligently through the forgiveness process now, as I know a lot of our CDC counterparties who participate in that program are as well. And very excited to get back into core lending in particular and with the 504 program, and going to talk a little bit more about our construction program today, more specific. Let's talk a little bit about 504 construction opportunities for CDCs. We know there are a lot of 504 lenders out there. Not all of the 504 lenders across the country offer ground up construction lending programs or extensive business plan financing options. But Liberty SBF is currently financing ground up construction throughout the United States, which I think is a very important distinguishing factor. We can lend in all 50 states. We are actively lending on projects across the country. And the property types that we're able to finance include hospitality, industrial, self-storage, owner-user office, and retail, and healthcare and daycare properties. Healthcare facilities including skilled nursing and assisted living, where we have a particular expertise. We are actively lending on hospitality. I know that's an area where we have seen some pullback since COVID from some of the bank lenders, third-party lenders, but we are actively lending on all of the property types listed on this slide deck. Typically up to 2-year interim financing to complete construction. We will look at longer dated construction plans if it makes sense. A lot of the larger construction programs, obviously we're going to be very heavily focused on sponsor experience, guarantor experience, net worth and liquidity wherewithal to weather the project. And generally looking to close more loans by enabling borrowers to finance construction and rehab with 504, and really have unlimited capacity to lend both as a third-party lender as well as an interim lender in the program. So want to talk a little bit about how we're pricing these deals. So like other secondary market 504 lenders, we're typically looking at different asset or property types and pricing each. What we've done more recently is, if you look at what our pricing schema on the page here, we break that down in terms of our perm financing rate versus our interim financing rates. Typically, what we'll do is we'll price a construction project or an interim financing piece based on an interest-only floating rate during the construction or interim period. And then we will provide a takeout, obviously embedded in the same 504 structure based on a perm rate, financing rate. And those are typically priced based on property type and location, as well as, more recently looking at business cash flow coverage historically, help give guidance to our CDC partners and our referral partners on generally how to price these deals, both on the perm side as well as on the floating side. Very quickly, we'll run through perm pricing. We look at deals and credit pricing based on businesses that have a certain amount of business cash flow coverage. Deals that we can get creative and finance deals that may only have 1 year of business DSCR coverage at a 125. Obviously, that pricing is going to be a little bit different than a business that has 2 years of trailing cash flow coverage above a 125. But I think our pricing sheet gives a good indication of the major factors that are going to influence risk pricing here at Liberty. And as I mentioned, the two biggest factors are going to be historical cash flow coverage, and then whether or not our sponsor is conforming based on net worth and liquidity, or whether that asset is based in a tertiary market. We have a more formal underwriting parameter sheet that you can request that lays out what we view as conforming in terms of business coverage, in terms of sponsor, net worth and liquidity, different aspects of our credit analysis based on individual property types that I think are very helpful when you're looking at whether or not a deal is going to be a fit here at Liberty. Obviously, today we're talking about construction financing. I want to talk a little bit more about how we price the interim financing piece for construction or a larger CapEx type deal. And I want to note here that we are also able to provide interim financing even if we are not the third-party lender. So we historically, pre-COVID, had been very active in providing interim financing for lenders that either cannot do their own interim seconds, but they are financing or funding the first lien third-party loan at close. We can do those. We're historically have financed a lot of those types of transactions. We can also provide ground-up construction and interim financing where we are the third-party lender as well as the interim lender. And we typically look at pricing based on the length of the business plan associated with that interim loan. So for deals less than 3 months, where typically you're doing a refi or a straight acquisition, we're going to be pricing that at L650, interest only during the interim period. Typically, that's going to be a 1-point origination fee. For any heavier CapEx, where they're doing a build out or there's some sort of CapEx project associated with the property, but maybe it's not a ground up construction loan, typically that's going to get priced at L plus 750. When we say L, we're talking about 30-day LIBOR. That will carry a 1.5-point origination fee. And then ground up construction, we're typically starting to price at L plus 850. There's definitely going to be some leeway in pricing based on the strength and experience of the guarantor. And so we recommend that you give us a call. We'll talk a little bit how to submit a deal later on in the presentation. This is meant to serve as a guideline. We can be a little bit tighter on pricing based on the strength and experience of the guarantor. So I think it's always important to preview a transaction with us in order to get current market pricing or sort of bespoke pricing specific to a particular deal example. And obviously there's a lot of factors, whether that's property type, location, guarantor, strength, experience of the guarantor. And so every deal is a little bit different, and we can provide some specific bespoke pricing based on the individual transaction. I'm going to kick it over to Alex Prombaum so he can walk us through a few live deal exampple. They're actually not live deal examples, they're deals that we've closed. But I think it gives you a good sense of the types of deals that we fund here at Liberty, particularly deals that have more business plan intensive or more, CapEx intensive business plans, or that may have a lot of construction components to those deals. Alex, kick it over to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the webinar. My name is Alex Prombaum, and I run credit and underwriting here at Liberty. And we've been making, as Alex mentioned, 504 loans for over a decade. We started Liberty primarily to make SBA 504 loans. So this is very much what we do, and love partnering with CDCs around the country. So this first example is a loan that we closed about 2 years ago in Portland, Oregon, and it's something that's not quite finished, but a good example of a loan which was not ground up rehab, but was major gut rehab conversion, and it was essentially ground up, construction in terms of how much construction there was. The sponsor only bought the property for about $800,000, and then there was a $1.3 million construction budget. Our borrower guarantor was a consulting firm, or is a consulting firm in Portland, which specializes in diversity and inclusion consulting for corporations. And their business over the last few years has grown, exponentially for a lot of different reasons. But they identified a unique property in downtown Portland, which when they bought it was completely vacant and actually red tagged by the city. There was some seismic issues there. And it had previously been used as a jazz club on the lower floor and basement, and then apartments on the second floor. Their dream was to spend about $1.3 million, fix the seismic issue, and convert it to really high-end office. It was meant to be about a year and a half project. We closed this loan, I think, in November of 19. And the expectation was always that it was going to take about 4 or 5 months to get all the necessary permits and approvals to start construction. So if you do your math and see where that ends up, that puts you right around March 2020, around the time to start construction, and really right into COVID. So it wasn't ideal timing from that standpoint. But that being said, we were able to work, very constructively with the CDC and with the borrower to deal with different change orders and time frame modifications in order to ultimately keep the project on track. We had to adjust the budget. We had to extend our interim loan. This was a loan where we actually partnered with another lender who did the first, and we just did the interim. So we were just in this transaction acting as interim lender. But we were able to get through all of that, work with their GC, work with, we utilized partners construction management team on our end to help ensure that the construction went smoothly and got to completion. And we were able to get through all of that, and they actually received their certificate of occupancy last month. And we were able to get to the finish line. We're just now getting all the different documentation together to file for debenture, and we're hoping for a November debenture. This was, on one hand, you could look at it, it didn't go as planned for a lot of different reasons. But at the other, in a lot of ways, I think that this is very positive, because even though there were unexpected things that happened, and that happens sometimes in construction, we had the right team in place. We had the right consultants in place. We were working with a great CDC and Evergreen, and we were able to get this to the finish line, get this completed, and handle, all of the different things that came up because of COVID. And the result has been a great project. The borrowers couldn't have done this project without SBA 504. This was their first construction project. They're somewhat of a newer business, but their business had a lot of success, a lot of growth. They've continued to grow through COVID. So we're, very happy with how this loan has went. And I think it's a great example of our, our construction capabilities, as well as our ability to deal with unforeseen circumstances. So this was a great example of that. This is a little bit different profile of transaction. This was a very interesting 504 that we did in Philadelphia. The borrower was actually a pretty large real estate investment company, owned over 10,000 apartment units in the Northeast, which is would not usually think of as a candidate for 504. But they also do all of their property management in-house. So they have a lot of employees. They have hundreds of employees and a pretty big operating business. And so they had a dream to buy an office building in downtown Philadelphia, which they bought for $7 million, and then perform $1 million renovation on that property to upgrade it to more Class A office, but additionally to build out within their office space incubator co-working space for other commercial real estate companies and startups in Philadelphia. So it was a very cool concept. This group of guarantors owned 3 different operating businesses with shared ownership, which all were guarantors on the transaction, and they were all operating in different locations, and they were able to build out the space in a way where everyone could come in. It was a really cool project. And again, not typically the type of guarantor business profile we'd use for 504. These were also guarantors that had quite a bit net worth and liquidity. I think something like 150 affiliates. We worked with Seedcopa, and we got through all the affiliates and all the analysis. They met the size standards. They had enough employees, and it ended up working out. It was a really great transaction. What ended up being was really beautiful office space in downtown Philadelphia. The $1 million budget was able to build out their space, as well as build out this co-working space, a rooftop deck to host different events downtown. They were able to, complete the construction in about 6 months, just because that was their background and their business, very experienced in construction. And then 3 more months just to get everything together for the venture funding. So the whole thing it was a 9-month interim loan. And it was it really showed great for SBA 504, because these were borrowers and guarantors who would not use typically 504 because they're in investment real estate. They didn't know about the product. They didn't come to us for a 504 loan. They came to us for a bridge loan. And we said, something, you could be eligible for 504. This is a way to build out your budget, get 90% loan to value financing. And ended up being a great, really poster child for 504, because we were able to include all of their costs in the capital structure, get that full LTV, and it was just such a smooth, efficient process. We were able to meet their different time constraints, and it was really great. So another example, we did a number of construction loans in Philadelphia, and they actually referred some of their other people in the industry to come to us, and we did similar loans for them in Philadelphia. So that was really great. So 2 examples of construction loans we've done, more rehab than construction, but pretty heavy rehab. We are very interested in continuing to do loans like this and do ground up construction, and we welcome any opportunities that you have to look at and work with you to help structure these for your borrowers. The Evergreen loan, the loan in Portland, I think was referred to us by Evergreen, and that has been a great partnership and a very successful loan. So we work very closely with our CDCs. We'd love to work with you guys. And I think that's it. I'm going to kick it back to Alex to talk a little bit about the process for submitting a loan.
Great. Thanks, Alex. So I want to talk a little bit about how to submit a loan in our process. The best way to preview a transaction is to submit the deal to Warren Rockra, our national head of sales. His email address is vrockra@libertysbf.com, up on the screen here. And in terms of being able to provide a commitment, we like to be able to provide a loan commitment to our referral sources and borrowers in 4 days or less, assuming that we can get a full package in-house. Our typical process is, shoot Warren an email, present the general parameters of the loan request. Typically, if we have information on the guarantors in terms of net worth, liquidity, and experience, some information generally about the business and their historical cash flow, and some information on the property or feasibility, study on the construction, we can provide you with a quote within 24 hours. If that's something that the borrower and CDC and broker or referral source want to move forward with, we will more formally screen the deal. Again, if you're interested in receiving a checklist of the information that we need in order to screen a deal, please email Warren. He's able to provide that to you. But it's a pretty standard checklist of items that we would need pertaining to the business, the property, and the guarantors. And then within 48 hours of receiving that, our credit team is able to screen the transaction. We're able to preview it on our pipeline call and provide a CCL, typically within 4 days or less. Once we, the CCL is really the document that we use. It is a formal term sheet as well as a credit questionnaire for the borrowers, and is really the document we use plus a deposit to get the process started. At that point, we'll have a kickoff call with the borrower, the CDC, and our own internal credit team. And then we're typically 30 to 45 days to close. What we will often do is work through our underwriting process and working with the CDC, internal CDC approval, and then submission to the SBA. Once we receive authorization, we're typically 1 to 2 weeks to close, and we can typically expedite legal and get closing done within 1 to 2 weeks. So all in, 3 to 45 days. With an SBA 504 transaction and with some of the timelines related to SBA, that could be a 45 to 60 day timeline. But Liberty has closed SBA 504 loans in as little as 30 days, as crazy as that sounds. But we've hit some pretty aggressive timelines when we have motivated borrowers who have all of their information ready to go and a CDC partner that's ready to move. So again, any questions, you can obviously ping myself or Alex Prombaum. Our contact information is on our website, libertysbf.com. But if you have a transaction you'd like to preview with us, please submit that to Warren Rockra, our national sales manager. And again, his email address is vrockra@libertysbf.com. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I think at this point, we will turn it over. If anyone has any questions, feel free to write those into the question and answer section of the Zoom app here. Give anyone a minute here if they have any questions. All right, no questions, Alex. That means you did an awesome job. All right, well, like I said, we're happy to answer any specific bill-related items that you might have or any questions that may come up along the way. We recommend that you send any of those questions to Warren Rockra. I thank you again for joining us today. And we look forward to doing business with all our CDC partners in the year to come. And I think the new year starts September 30th. So excited about a non-PPP, very 504 focused 2022. Thanks, everyone.